Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and Sirius XM Channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We are just a little more than an hour away from what is likely to be the first and only presidential debate between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump. It's a 90-minute showdown in Philadelphia with no audience. The microphones will be off when the other candidate is speaking. The debate begins at 9 o'clock and is expected to offer Americans their most detailed look at the campaign that has drastically changed since the last debate in June. What can we expect from each candidate? Will there be a knockout punch? And how will the debate shape what is already a very tight race? We've got a lot of voices to chime in tonight. Joining me for a preview of the political Philly thriller are Dr. Melanie Campbell, President and CEO of the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation and convener of the Black Women's Roundtable, Dr. Sharice Janae, political analyst and associate professor of political science at Alabama A&M University, Republican strategist Raynard Jackson, and Eugene Craig, chair of the Black Republicans for Harris Political Action Committee. Thank you all for joining this really important conversation. So much to talk about. Real quick, we know that Harris wants middle class tax cuts, tax hikes on the wealthy and corporations, a restoration of abortion rights, and a government that aggressively addresses climate change. We know that Trump wants the extension and expansion of his 2017 tax cuts, massive increase in tariffs, more support for fossil fuels, a greater concentration of government power in the White House. These candidates, of course, have spelled out their viewpoints, speeches, advertisements, the RNC, the DNC. Let me start with you, Dr. Sharice. What are you expecting to hear from tonight? Anything new?
No, I am not expecting anything new tonight. What I am expecting is for Kamala to show us her prosecutory skills. What I am expecting is for her to drill down on the message as to why she's different. Look, I think one of the biggest things that we're doing, or that I understand that the party is doing, is trying to treat this as a normal election. This is not a normal election. It is a there are very distinct differences here. And the differences are not policy differences. The differences are, do you want to keep the democracy or not, right? When one of the founding fathers was asked, right, it looks like you guys got the Constitution over the finish line. He said, we have a republic if we can keep it. And what we will see tonight is why she argues that Donald Trump is unfit to be president of these United States.
Eugene, what are you expecting to hear tonight from either candidate? Anything new?
Well, look, I think we're going to get a reintroduction of Vice President Harris to be President Harris to the world. We're going to get a lot of lies, and I mean extreme order and amount of lies from Donald Trump. He's going to lie from beginning to literal end. The only truth he that may slip through is literally how much he hates this country, how much he hates the people, how much he hates the way we talk, the way we dress, every aspect of us. And that just slips through because that's what's in his id. But you're going to see a dichotomy between two candidates, one that is literally the American dream and one that literally does everything to destroy the American dream. And the thing is this, we've seen the Donald Trump show for the last decade, right? We've seen his racism. We've seen his sexism. We've seen his misogyny. We've seen the way he tears down this country and his people. But what we are going to see for the first time is him stand across from somebody that's a prosecutor, that's trained, that knows how to handle people just like him, and will be handling him in front of the entire country to see.
Dr. Campbell, what are you expecting to hear? What would surprise you from either candidate?
Well, first of all, thank you. It's great to be here with all
of
you. What I call Black Her Story is American History Moment, right? I expect for her to talk to the American people. I expect for her to spend more time looking out into that camera and talking to those of us sitting in our living rooms, so that because the chaos that has always been around the former president will show up. There won't be supposedly you won't be able to hear him if he jumps in and jumps out, or either one of them jump in and jump out. So if she spends all of her, and this is my humble opinion, if she spends all her time dealing with the lies and trying to rebut the lies, yes, she has to do some of that. But I think I hope to see her spend more time. So you sit in the living room, you can get to know her, understand where she stands with her issues, and talk to the people. And I think that will come across stronger than anything else, because we can get the banter. She knows how to prosecute, and and she's not scared, right? So to push back, but also as a woman, it's difficult, because if you too aggressive, oh, she was just so aggressive. If he's aggressive, he was just aggressive. So that's not just a Black woman thing. That's a woman. That's a issue we have in our body politics. So that's the surprise to me would be that Donald Trump would tell a few truths. Surprise to me is he would come in there with some real policy and not just a bunch of bunk.
Reynard, let me ask you, because we've heard for years, and we've even heard today, a lot of people are saying, let Trump be Trump. What are the landmines, the potholes, the speed bumps that you believe he needs to avoid to be successful tonight?
Well, as I put it, Harold, and thank you for having me on the show. It's always
Sure.
good to see my long-lost daughter, Melody. And I'll beat you up off camera, though, Mel. I always said about this election, the Democrats can't win. Kamala Harris cannot win, but Trump can lose. And if Trump keeps his comments tonight and throughout the rest of the campaign on issues, I see no way of Harris refuting her notorious flip-flopping on all these major issues. Here's what I think, and not to be contrarian, Harold, because you've never seen me be contrarian. So
of course not.
But here's what I'm going to say that's going to go against the grain. I think I would put both candidates through what I call my volume test, which means turn the sound down on your TV and just read their body language. And if you cannot ascertain what they're talking about by their facial expression and body language, I think most people in the public, Harold, they've already made up their decision on policy on both sides. So you're not going to convince anyone to switch sides. So I think, how do you come across? Does Kamala Harris come across as a relatable person? Does he come across as a competent person? And with Trump, does he come across as the overbearing bully with his body language? Those are the things I'm looking at, because I don't expect any substance to take place.
It's interesting.
Harold, I guess that's Dr. Melanie's point, right? That as a woman, and a woman of color, dare I say a Black woman, she's at a distinct disadvantage, right? So if we're following Reynard's turn the volume down test, she's at a distinct disadvantage, because any level of neck roll, any level of finger, any level of forceful level of movement is then going to put her in a negative connotation, or put her in a negative space, all while she is passionately displaying her points. And I think for 90 minutes to ask a Black woman not to have one eye roll and one neck roll, or not one point out for a known liar, is unreasonable.
So let me go back to Renard's point. And as a student of history, one of the things that I think is really interesting, you want to take this back to that first televised debate between Richard Nixon and John F. Kennedy during the 1960 election. If you turned it down, it has always been argued that Richard Nixon lost because he wasn't prepared for the optics. And I think that's one of the things that Reynard is talking about, to the point about Kamala Harris, being a woman, being a Black woman. Eugene, do you think that she is at a disadvantage, considering her extensive resume and intellectual pedigree?
Look, the thing is this, right? I think she's at an advantage. First and foremost, she stood on stages with white men her entire professional career. She's debated white men her entire political career. In 2020 primary, which I also supported her in that, she debated a whole stage of white men. When she debated Vice President Harrison, Vice President Pence, in the vice presidential debate. When she ran for U.S. Senate, when she ran for AG, she also had to debate white men. The only difference here is that she will be debating a rambling, incoherent, and incompetent white man that just happened to be a former president of the United States. So the dichotomy that will be displayed here is literal competency and literal incompetency. Competency and competency. You're going to see Donald Trump ramble on tonight. That's going to be the difference here. And she's prepared for the optics of it, whereas maybe Joe Biden wasn't prepared for that in the first debate. She absolutely 100% will be prepared for it tonight because this is something she's been prepared for her whole life. But the thing is this, Donald Trump is the one that won't be prepared. Donald Trump's the one whose team is scared right now about how tonight will turn out. Donald Trump is the one who's not prepared for somebody like her who'll be zoned in, zero focused on him, and will grab him with the aggressiveness that he requires. Because at the end of the day, someone like Donald Trump, a candidate like Donald Trump, I'll tell you as a political consultant, does require a certain level of aggressiveness from your candidate. And the issue is that people have been handling him with kid gloves, hoping not to offend certain parts of this country. But at the end of the day, our democracy, our republic is too valuable, too fragile to let up even a centimeter on somebody like Donald Trump. And the optics of tonight will be a literal, competent vice president of the United States, former attorney general, former U.S. senator, former state's attorney, district attorney, against somebody that is a literal, rambling old man. That's the dichotomy.
Speaking of Black women, Melanie, you today released the 11th annual Black Women's Roundtable report. I'm sure it was planned to release it. And we've had you on the program just to talk about the report for so many years, but just kind of give me a synopsis, particularly in the context of where we are right now. Black women voters, just what does this report say different compared to some of the reports of the past?
Thank you. Well, the theme of this year's report is 11 years, but the first time we're releasing it, and the timing couldn't have been better. And I would be lying if I told you that 3 months ago when I decided to do it in September, I knew that we'd be writing about this historic moment. But timing is timing. So the theme of it, this year's report was about owning our power, right? And so really we have over 30 short essays written by dynamic sisters, academia, to grassroots and all in between, right? But honing in on the importance of what this 2024 election means. So diving in up and down the ballot, what does this really mean? Owning our power as Black women. So there's information in there that really talks and goes deeper about what all of this means. We know we're in a time where that power has to help protect our rights and freedoms. We go to that. We talk about owning our power, preserving things like Black history, right? This big, coming from a small town where my mother had put Black history in the school system in the public schools in Florida. My home state that keeps on giving takeaway, if you will, and what we need to promote. And so there's an element of research that dealt with and how one of the last things that I added, that I wrote, was about the moment that we're in. This that Black her story is American history, and what that means. How did we get here? How did Vice President Kamala Harris become the nominee? It did not start with her. It starts with Fannie Lou Hamer and the like. So we had a really good, robust. I'm you get that report, but it goes not just.
Hold on, Dr. Campbell. I've got to take a break. Please just hang on, and I'll let you finish your point.
Okay.
We are going to take a break, but don't forget you can hear this and every edition of the Daily Drum Insight segment via podcast on WHUR.com, The Original Quiet Storm is next on WHUR. I'm Harold Fisher. This conversation continues on 96.3 HD2 and Sirius XM channel 141 in just a few seconds. Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We continue our preview of the presidential debate between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump. My guests are Dr. Melanie Campbell, President and CEO of the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation and convener of the Black Women's Roundtable, Dr. Sharice Janae, political analyst and associate professor of political science at Alabama A&M University, Republican strategist Raynard Jackson, and Eugene Craig, chair of the Black Republicans for Harris Political Action Committee. Dr. Campbell, briefly, please finish up your point about today's report. What's the takeaway from this report?
The takeaway goes back to the theme: politically, economically, socially, historically. And that's the essence of the report. So we talk about wealth and Black wealth and how we look at new. One sister who's a scholar who talked about a unique way of looking at building wealth. And so so those perspectives were all about. Our tip was to take an issue and come up with a solution or celebrate some of the good things that are happening. And so that it has more of and then organizing strategy. So we try to make it be a useful piece of research.
Yeah, well, let us hope that some of the issues that are mentioned in this report will come out tonight in one way or another during the course of this debate. So, Dr. Sharice, one of the other issues certainly that should be considered tonight is we've got microphones that are going to be off. And what do you think of that? Do you like the idea? First of all, do you not like the idea? And who do you think it may benefit tonight?
Well, so I'm glad you asked that. So we talked earlier in the program about, Raynard's smell test, right? And going back historically, right, to that debate, right? The very first debate that we saw on television, and it came off of radio, right, where we saw Nixon. But again, I go back to we're comparing two white men, right? We're comparing apples to apples. When we're talking about a Black woman, right? Again, a woman of color, a Black woman, dare I say, there are already negative images that certain people are walking in the door with. And so they're going to be looking for those things to be confirmed. And so when I say that to say that the mics being turned off are only to Donald Trump's benefit, because we will not get to see on live television the level of disrespect we have already seen by Donald Trump. We can think about it when it comes to April Ryan. We can think about it when it comes to the young Black journalist at the National Association of Black Journalists that just happened this summer. We could think about the young lady on CNN. I mean, the list goes on and on. How Donald Trump has disrespected Black women in a public forum. And what we are going to miss tonight is that she's going to have to deal with him hollering at her off mic, while the rest of us are then listening or watching his body language as he hollers at her off the mic.
Do you think that's the case, Eugene? Do you think that the muted mic will benefit Donald Trump or hurt him?
I think. Listen, I'll say this. I think it will protect him a bit, right? But there are crosstalk rules. So if he decides that he wants to come off his mic and interrupt her or whatnot, I think that volume and that footage and that audio will be out there for us to hear and see probably in real time. And look, I commend Vice President Harris and her team for not letting the mic rule become the sole determining factor if the debate happens or not, because Team Trump was hoping that they could nitpick about the mics or nitpick about audience or nitpick about X, Y, and Z, and then the debate just doesn't happen, right? He pulled out of it twice and then had to come right back and run right back to it. So, I think that the rule does protect him because we know he's an uncontrollable old, just flabbermouth, just runs off at the mouth. He has diarrhea of the mouth, right? And it's not coherent at all. So it does protect him. But at the end of the day, We'll get some of it during the whole via the crosstalk rules. But more importantly, when he is muted, that means that Vice President Harris is speaking, and it'll be a great opportunity for her to lay out her vision for the country to be contrasted against Project 2025.
Speaking of influencing voters, because at this point, we know that the base for either candidate is pretty much set. So, Renard, do you think that this debate is really going to make much of a difference? And if you believe that it will, to whom will it make a difference? Who will these candidates be speaking to?
Well, again, I'm going back to my turn the volume off theory, Harold. Trump, I don't know if you've ever been around him in private settings. I have. Trump.
I can't say that I have.
Well, we're gonna have to change it. Take you down to Mar-a-Lago.
That's all right. But go ahead. I'll see him in a press conference whenever. But we can save the Mar-a-Lago stuff for too rich for my blood. But anyway, go right ahead.
But again, I think you all have been in the Beltway too long. You all are talking like insiders, which you are. All of us are insiders. But I'm looking at this from the vantage point of Pookie and Raheem, them just regular voters. They go to work every day. They vote every election cycle, but they're not junkies like we are. And I'm telling you, the visual, Trump is going to be towering over her physically. That's number one. I don't care. I'm sure she's going to be on a riser or something, but he's still going to tower over her. Trump had the innate ability, it's a gift, where he controls a room when he walks into a room. And so again, I think on issue, the public has made up their mind on either side on the issue. I think the optics, the visual, and vocal tonality, those intangibles, that's going to be determined as to who is perceived to have won. Because again, I think they're going to go after each other on personality and all that stuff. But on the substance, people already have made up their mind on that. So I think Harris has more to lose than Trump. Trump is a known entity, and all your views of Trump, negative or positive, are already baked in.
Harold, I don't think, just quickly, I don't think that she is going to chase after him from a personality perspective. She already showed us in the interview, in the forced interview that everybody cried that she had to have, while Donald Trump gets to run around and not participate in the regular media norms. She gets slapped on the hand because she won't participate in the media norms. So she has a debate, and she has an interview. And in that interview, when they started to talk about how Donald Trump has personally attacked her, she forewent the questions. She said, made a very short statement, and ask for the next question. So the idea that she's going to get drawn into personal attacks, I don't think that she will be undisciplined enough to chase that rabbit.
Melanie, who do you believe needs to be convinced by tonight's debate? Who are these candidates talking to?
I feel, what I said before, people can say, oh, it's just the independents. I think if you step back, and in all years I've been doing this longer than I ever thought I'd be doing this, to be honest, right? You also know when there's movement energy, a political movement moment, it wasn't just emotional, but in practical terms. I should be talking to those younger voters out there who are worried about their future. You have an increase in voter registration that was organic. Things that happened. My brother, 68 years old, I was in Florida because he was having some things going on. So I happened to be in Florida when Biden decided to step out of the race, and then a few minutes later endorsing her. Seeing my 68-year-old retired brother who initially sunk at the thought of what are we going to do with Biden stepping out. Out of his chair when he announced he was endorsing her, and he's not a sexist, but he does. He's not like his baby sister. He just not. He don't have politics in the Beltway. What you talked about. But he pays attention as a black man, and the level of response was ready. He made phone calls. He doing phone banking. So there are things that are happening in an organic way that are movement, not the Obama movement. No, it's the Kamala Harris movement. And what happened and what is happening is if you're increasing voter registration without people having to worry about third-party problems that we have had because of a lot of voter laws of making it harder for groups like ours to register people. People are doing it on their own, but a lot of them are young. And so I think what she should be talking about, all of us, yeah, but talk to those new folks, because we talk about the independence and the inside outside game. But that average person, there's something was lit up in them. That's the energy doesn't go away in 30 days. Like I know being, at the convention that there was more going on. Talking to folks in the barbershop. When I talk to somebody who goes to the barbershop early in the morning, that right over here in Maryland, who told me this, the brothers have shifted. So for months, they were like, I ain't with Colin. I'm not doing, no, that's the thing. We all in. So other things happen. They don't show up in the polls. They don't show up when we, like we talked about, what we all see around here. But there is movement happening, and I don't care what's happening on these networks. Talk to people, and on the ground, people are fired and they're spending money. Look, let me just say really quickly, if you don't mind. I'm gonna tell you 3 months ago, if I had heard there was gonna be a white man with white dudes Kamala, or white women's call for Kamala, I would have been like, a lot of them like, that's racist, but it's not. There's something else that allow that to happen. And of course, Joe Taker with the 44,000 and the brothers having that and raising $1 million in a matter of hours. That doesn't go away because the conventions are over. It's still happening on the ground. People are volunteering their time.
Yeah. You make an excellent point, Dr. Campbell. Eugene, one of the things I wanted to ask you as the chair of Republicans for Harris Political Action Committee, nothing is normal in this election. We are seeing all kinds of firsts. Explain to me about Republicans for Harris. That is something that I'm not quite sure that I would have seen until we heard from Liz Cheney, former Vice President Dick Cheney, and some other prominent Republicans who are coming out and supporting Kamala Harris. What's going on from your perspective?
So I'm actually chair of Black Republicans for Harris. I am involved with Republicans for Harris, but particularly, look, we're Black Republicans for Harris. Every time a Byron Donalds or a Wesley Hunt or Burgess Owens gets up on TV to say something stupid, idiotic, or defend Donald Trump's racism or defends Donald Trump's misogyny, it's going to be myself and others standing right there on the other side, correcting him, calling it out, and standing in the fold. The other part of this is that, hey, we will be the margin, right? It will be sensible Black Republicans that say, hey, look, one, our party has left us. Two, the Republican Party isn't a conservative party anymore. Three, the Republican Party isn't a freedom party anymore. Four, hey, our democracy and our republic is worth fighting for and worth saving and making sure it doesn't fall in the hands of Donald Trump. And five, somebody that literally raised and started and led a coup against the Constitution of this country, against the government of this country, against the people of this country should never be anywhere near the White House, let alone the Oval Office ever again. So myself and others, we formed a PAC, and we're going to be playing in places like Georgia, like Texas, like Florida, and making sure that Donald Trump is opposed every step of the way. But more importantly, right, that there's a counterweight there when they're working to extend them to raise their margin with Black men. It's going to be me standing there saying, hey, listen, as a Black man, as a 34-year-old Black Republican, hey, you saw what happened with Tyreek Hill yesterday? Just imagine what that looks like on steroids with another Donald Trump presidency. That's what we're here for. And so we're here to stand in the fold. We're going to be the margin. If this is a close election, I guarantee it's going to be one because, hey, some Black Republicans decided to cross over in some key critical swing states. And we're going to take the next 60 so days to make sure that happens and help Vice President Harris get across that finish line, because our futures are worth it. Our country is worth it. Our communities are worth it. When I say communities, I mean Black folk are worth it. they're worth not having Donald Trump in power again and ruining more Black lives.
Interesting. Dr. Charisse, this is going to be on ABC. This is a legacy news operation like NBC, like CBS. Donald Trump has criticized ABC, but we know that he's going to criticize any news organization
that's not Fox and Friends.
Well, that is not friendly. That is not friendly to him. And my colleagues at ABC, they have a long-standing reputation, I would say, of fairness, of hard-nosed questions. What impact do you believe this is going to have if they ask him or her the tough questions, the uncomfortable questions?
Well, we already know this is not going to be CNN, right? And we know that this is not going to be CNN, right? Because we know that he's not going to be comfortable. Let me just be very clear. Mm-hmm. We know that he's not going to be comfortable. And one of the biggest reasons he's not going to be comfortable is because he has a problem with accountability. And what we know about good journalists is that they're going to hold you accountable to whatever it is, right? No matter what their political leanings are or aren't. What we also know is that Kamala Harris is going to hold him accountable for the things that he did do. That's what Black women do primarily. We are accountability. We are my husband often calls us the accountability police, right? Like that's who we are as women, right? Women are, but especially Black women and women of color. And when we're talking about a major legacy network, they are concerned with that legacy staying strong in them holding people to being accountable, regardless of their party affiliation, right? We understand for instance, Washington Post, their motto, their hang tag is "Democracy dies in the dark," right? And I say that because these legacy media organizations are trying to ensure that they stay relevant in a shifting media landscape, and the way to continuously remain relevant is to hold everybody and anybody accountable.
Mm-hmm. Reynard, are you concerned about the former president pushing back on really difficult questions or not answering questions? I'm sure you saw, and this has been a very, very high profile answer when he was asked last week at that Fox town hall about childcare, and his answer was all over the place. Let's be honest, that was a softball. That was a slow, underhand pitch.
Right, Harold, what do you? I know the questions of Reynard, but the thing is this, right? What do you expect from a man who has never taken care of his own kids and has a running mate who bemoans women that actually do take care of kids or don't have kids? Like what can you reasonably expect? I mean, of course he's not going to have an answer on childcare because he has no understanding of what the average married mom, let alone the average single mom, and he's created multiple of them, go through when they're juggling work, their kids' schooling, maybe their own schooling, and trying to figure out everything in between. Of course he wouldn't have an answer because he has no understanding, no vantage point there. And it's also going to be one of the reasons why he loses. But I'll let Reynard answer.
Yeah, I mean, Reynard, that is a kitchen table. That's a fundamental kitchen table question.
No, the issue is, number one, Trump has run a multi-billion-dollar corporation for decades. And have you ever noticed that not one employee has ever come out publicly and talked about the lack of good benefits as an employee of the Trump organization? And so I think that speaks for itself. I think whatever you think about Trump's politics, Trump has done a masterful job with his own family as far as how his kids turned out. Never been in any trouble, successful, and continuing the legacy of the family business. I think the issue on this child care, because I think is inappropriate for
Reynard, wait, that's a lie. That's a lie.
What?
That's a lie. The Trump kids literally were just all barred from running a corporation or a foundation in the state of New York. along with their father.
No.
The only one that went unscathed was Ivanka. And if we're going to be honest about it, Jared and Ivanka pimped out the White House for their own gain to the tune of $2 billion. Meanwhile, we're sitting here talking about Hunter Biden and a laptop. If we're going to have a conversation, have an honest conversation here.
Trump has done a wonderful job with his kids. His kids have run that company second to none.
They were stealing from their own foundation. The courts in New York, right? The courts in New York literally just found them liable for fraud. Literally within the last year.
And hopefully you're going to be this vociferous in admitting that this was all an orchestrated, contrived warfare against Trump.
Absolutely.
So Raynard, let's do this.
Why do you
Raynard, let's do this. So okay, if we're going to concede that the courts are crooked, if we're going to concede that, then I want you to stand with all the black men that have been wrongfully convicted by overzealous white prosecutors over the last 100 years, and stand with Black Lives Matter. If you're willing to do that, I'll concede the Trump point. One mic on you. One mic on you.
Okay, so hold on. I don't. As irritating as this is, my question, Raynard, was about the child care issue. This is not, and I mean, it's a simple kitchen table issue.
No. But what I think what you're pointing to, Trump, it goes against his instinct. I think Trump, what
goes against his instinct?
This whole question of child care. I think everyone, agrees it's a great idea. The complexity comes into, do you think it's the role of the government to mandate something like that? And the answer is no. And I think that's Trump's instinct, is telling them, no, it's a great idea, but the government has no role and no right to mandate an employee to receive these types of benefits. The government and the corporation should decide that, but there should not be a federal mandate for that.
But there should be a federal mandate to have the kid. But there should be a federal mandate to have the kid, but not a federal mandate to help take care of the kid. Let me tell you why. Let me tell you where conservatives like you get it wrong. From a conservative like me, right? Pro-life doesn't just stop at abortion, right? Pro-life means pro-life. It means development of the life. It means, hey, if I'm going to force you to have this kid, if I'm going to jam down federal abortion ban, if I'm going to jam down restricting rights in southern states where people need them best, we need them most, then the government actually has a responsibility to help you take care of that kid. If the government wants to come into the household and tell you how to grow your household, the government has a responsibility to make sure you're sustaining that household. Because guess what? When you have poverty, we have children lacking resources.
Okay, hold on. All right, hold on. Let me hold on, gentlemen. I'm going to try this one more time, then I'm going to Melanie. My question was, Raynard, and I just used childcare as an example because your response was, whether you believe that the government should be involved in the administration of childcare, whether it's tax credits, whatever. I get it. My question was about Donald Trump. He was thrown a softball last week in a friendly venue. He did not answer the question. No,
but that's my point, Harold. If you look at Trump's record as a private sector employer, he's provided his employee with all kind of benefits.
My question is, why didn't he say
bring it up?
But that's what I'm saying, Harold. He's torn between his private sector instincts versus should the government require a person to receive, or an agency or a private corporation to give these benefits, and that's where he got stuck at. I think if he follows his natural instinct, he would say that is not the role of the government. If an employer wants to do it on his own, go for it. But the government, and I won't support.
Well, right now that should be his answer.
Yeah, go ahead, Melanie.
That should be his answer. Right? If that's where he stands, he's running for president of the United States. We've been fighting. I'm on a disagreement with you about universal paid leave and things like that, because it is about looking at the realities of what our workforce looks like and what we need to have a viable economy. And so these things help if women are able to stay in the workforce. These things help. But if those were the things that he believes in, then tell us that. And he did not. And so I hope we're surprised tonight. I doubt we're surprised tonight, because he has not had to speak up. He don't need none of us to be his mouthpiece. Tell us what you're gonna do.
Does that apply to Harris as well?
Let me finish. He does have a 4-year record. Talk about your record, because you're an incumbent, right? You got thrown out for the first. You want to come back for a fourth. So tell us what you're gonna do. And I think that's what's going to be critical tonight. He probably won't. We all will see it together. But at the end of the day, I hope Vice President Harris, as I said earlier today, talk to the people who are on the other side of this screen, right? Like we're sitting here, and let folks know what she's gonna do. He, on the other hand, I seriously doubt has the capacity to do, because we've lived through Donald Trump beyond that. Just this man, and I'm just speaking as Melanie Campbell. You gotta do what you gotta do. But at the end of the day, we're long enough to know when we're in a existential threat in this country, and we are there. We are there. And so as Black people in this United States, if we don't think we got a problem, everybody's talking about Project 2025 because it's a real thing. It's a blueprint. It's a freaking blueprint. And what's in that? And part of what Donald Trump tends to do, and I believe every time he talks about somebody else doing it, that's what he's gonna do. Because
Exactly.
Of what he said he was gonna do, or what somebody else did, he was gonna do.
Let me stop you there, Melanie. I've got to let Dr. Sharice have the last word, and I'm going to ask pretty much the same thing about Kamala Harris, whether it is in relation to the border or how she has evolved or changed her mind, however you want to describe it. Is she going to have to defend that?
So let me run down all.
You got 1 minute. Go ahead.
I'll make it very quick. I know how to be succinct. Number one, and first of all, the only reason the 34 felonies against Donald Trump is seen as a circus is because a Black woman brought them and a Black man made sure they got over the finish line. That's the only reason it's seen as a circus. If white folks were involved, we wouldn't be having the same kind of conversation about it. The same thing goes to the ability to ask a question. We are always holding Black people in this country to a higher standard, whether it be at a job, at your Black job, or whether it be working McDonald's, or whether it be running for the president of the United States of America. We are always asking Black people to be twice as good and sometimes 3 times as good to have half as much. So when we're having a conversation about is she going to backpedal, it's not about backpedaling. It's about the fact that she is still the vice president of these United States. As the vice president of these United States, your job is to fall in line behind the president of these United States. And when you support the president of these United States as a VP based upon how our system is built, you then take on the policies of that president. So it's not a pivot or a backpedal. It is the opportunity of her to establish her own platform and speak from where she as a Black woman stands, or as a woman of color stands. The issue that I have consistently, Harold, with all of this is that there is no issue with her taking the wins of the administration while simultaneously stepping away from the failures, because she was not the person in control. So when we talk about her backpedaling or her messaging, we have to be very clear that it is every right of a vice president, no matter what their color is, of a party, to take the wins of the party and then make a different decision on the issues that they fumbled.
I'm going to have that be the last word today. Enjoy the debate, learn from it. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about this again. That is the Daily Drum for this Tuesday, September 10th. I'm Harold Fisher. Good night.